Welcome to Careers Takeoff, where you learn the latest about how you can get ahead in your career. I'm your host, Conrad Chua. Welcome to this episode of Careers Takeoff. I'm your host, Conrad Chua, and today we have my colleague, Margaret O'Neill, with me to talk about the employment outcomes from our recent MBA graduating class.
Hello,
Welcome,
everyone.
Margaret.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Glad to be here. Nice to see you, Conrad.
So before we get started, I want to remind our audience, put your questions in the comments field, whether you're watching us on YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn, and we'll take your questions as and when they come in, right? So we can start off by letting us know in the comments or chat where in the world you're watching us today, all right? Now, to get started, first, we look at some of the headline figures in the employment report. Now, this is the class that started their MBA in 2020, right? September of 2020. They graduated, or they completed their studies 1 year later, September of 2021. And Margaret's team polled them 3 months after that completion of studies. So as we can see, the headline figures are 92% of the job seekers accepted their job offers within 3 months of graduation. We've got the average post-MBA base salary at £75,000, and we use purchasing power parity when converting all those local currencies into US dollars. And you can see the increase in average salary. Margaret, this looks like a really strong set of figures, especially when we compare it to the previous year, which was obviously affected quite a bit by COVID. Do you want to say anything about how the picture has rebounded?
Yeah, for sure. So obviously the COVID year, the 1920 year, had the most difficult year. They were interrupted right in the middle of their studies. And although we didn't have any reneges, there was a big slowdown. And so everything took a little bit longer. So although they're all now, we're looking forward to welcoming them back next week for their residential week. The offers came in, but they were a bit slower, and it took time for that to recover. The class of 2021 were coming in at a much healthier time, I think. And for example, the consultancies I know were in a look and see mode the previous year and were just holding flat on hiring. And then there was a bit of a boom year thereafter, and that's continuing now. So there's still a pretty much a boom in consulting since then. And although we've got the employed within 3 months of graduation at 92%, I think now, 5 or 6 months out, we've got almost the entire class is doing something they want, where they want. And the salary is probably higher as a result, because we've got a few people who are holding out for the right role and the right salary, who we keep in touch with until we know that they're okay and they've got what they want. And we've got some really nice stories of that too. So it's about being in the right place at the right time and doing the right job for you, and treating this strategically. So you've had your one intensive year, and just being a bit mindful about where you go next and making sure that your next step on the trajectory is the right one for you. It's not your job for life, but it's a really useful stepping point for your career. So
great, Margaret. Before we go on, let's just do a few shout outs to people who are watching. So Rubana, thanks for joining us from India. Rubana's a long-time viewer. I mean, I can say this with a straight face. We've only had 5 episodes this season.
Well,
thanks, Rubana. Hi, Joanna. She's a South African in London.
Excellent.
Reem from Saudi Arabia. Hi. Natasha's from Philadelphia. We've got Ashad, also from India. Someone from Cambodia watching us on LinkedIn.
Excellent.
Yash is from India. Paula's also been on a few previous live streams. So Paula's in Nigeria. Ryan's in New York. Isha's from India. Muhammad from Nigeria. Vatika from London. Right. So keep those comments coming in, but also start, if you've got any questions about what we cover, please um, just pop them in the comments or the chat. If we move on to the next slide, next piece of thing, we've got the switches. So, Margaret, do you want
Yeah.
to tell us what are these switches?
Yeah. So the holy grail, obviously, of the MBA is often those triple jumpers, those that switch industry, function, and location. And so it's really gratifying to see that with almost half the class have achieved that triple jump. The triple jump, where they've really managed to use their MBA to pivot into a new sector function and to a new location. But 98% of the class, so almost the entire class, achieved at least one of these switches. So almost the entire class achieved one of them, and three achieved, and 47% achieved all three. So if you're coming to do your MBA because you're really looking to make a change, obviously the hard work starts when you get here. It's not a given. This is not a golden platter. The journey is yours, but it's certainly possible to make a significant transformational change in your career with hard work and dedication and absolute focus.
And I think one thing that doesn't quite jump out here is the country, percentage of people who switched country. Margaret, how has that compared, this 64% figure, how does that compare with a year ago?
Oh, so last year, obviously, because of the situation we were in, more people returned to their home country. I think it was about 47% last year. So more people, because of COVID, went back to their home country and chose to start their career there due to all the restrictions of travel and the difficulty of visas and the difficulty of the COVID injections, the COVID inoculations and all the rest of it. So it made it much more complicated. So actually, 64% change in country is great. We'd normally hope for around 60%. So again, the opportunity to build your career other than where you started out. And I know that there's about, I think there's about 10 to 15% of our class were based in the UK or UK before they came, and it's gratifying to see how many are now living and working in the UK, which is great for us because it means we have great access to wonderful alumni ambassadors.
And I guess the increase in the percentage of people who switched country compared to a year ago probably led to that increase in the triple jumpers as well.
Completely, yeah. The location was the real. I mean, people did manage last year to switch industry and function, but they generally, when times are restricted, something has to give, and it was generally the location where you had to compromise. Having said that, I know a few from last year who did go home who are now moving back over into other parts of the world as well. So it was a bit of a blip, but 18 months on, they're doing great wherever they want to be.
Okay. A couple more shout outs. We've got Helen. Helen's you've got nice.
She has an Easter. Oh, it's Easter.
Oh, it's Easter in Missouri. Is it still Easter in Missouri, Helen? Bruce is from South Africa. Very nice photo over there. Hi from Vietnam. Grace is from Korea. Gyodi, is it? From Bolivia. Okay. And someone's working in London here. Sohail's from Pakistan. And Tommaso from Italy. So great. Very nice wide range of countries that people are watching from. And I think you'll see that that's also reflected in our class and where they're working in. If we move on, locations, I think we were talking a bit about this. So very big jump, very big number here in terms of the percentage of our students from last year working in the UK. So 60% are working in the UK. And Margaret, you mentioned that definitely we were looking only at about 20% of students coming into the program who were working in the UK. So
exactly,
what was this? What did people do to get those jobs here in the UK?
I think it was a healthier recruitment climate. As I said, there was a lot of stop and see a bit of a pause last year. But to be honest, international global talent, it's never been more important to be connected globally with the world and what's happening around the world. So those who can speak multiple languages, who've got experience elsewhere in the world, who can really justify their skills, their experience, and their motivation to a UK employer or an employer based in the UK with a global outreach is really that, you know, we're a central hub despite Brexit, which everyone's forgotten about. We're still a very central hub for global outreach. So there's a huge array of companies recruiting globally from the UK and who've got global headquarters here as well. We generally find, for example, when you look along that list, it's usually about, so I think East Asia, I think we had about 29% of the class were coming in from the Asia region generally, and about half of them have gone home and half of them have stayed. America, there was 17% of the class last year were from North America, and obviously half have stayed, and 8% have gone home. We do find in some parts of Asia, particularly countries like Indonesia, students often choose to go home and to build businesses there. And in India, some students choose to go back because they have family businesses. They choose where they want to go. I think it's just much more flexible on location. If you want to work in the UK, I would say just wanting to work in the UK isn't enough. You really have to demonstrate your skills, your experience, the value you can bring to that company, how your experience will allow them to build their business. So it's really about talking the language of the company that you're focusing on, and making yourself a really desirable candidate for them because they can see how you can add value for them. And that's what the trick really for those wanting to work in the UK. You know, having a sister here or wanting to be here or fancying 2 years in the UK is never enough because they don't care. They don't really care. They want to know what you can do for them.
Yeah, thanks very much, Margaret. I think it's a nice segue to this question that Joe Wang has. Joe's watching this on YouTube. Do we
Mm-hmm.
have the percentage number for people who switched to the US? I think that's where he's interested in.
I think most people who went back to the US were US citizens. We'd only have one or two who would switch to the US who don't have previous experience or, you know, a green card or ability to work there. It's much more complex going into the US. Asian countries and Europe. So we've had, you know, people switching from Europe to Singapore to Indonesia, etc., and to other countries in Western Europe. But generally, if you're thinking about the States, that's a challenge because obviously with the visa rules the way they are, you'd have to have and it's a bit of a lottery. It's not only a bit of a lottery; it is a lottery if you get your visa to stay in the UK, in the US. In the UK, it's been a bit more flexible. You might have heard recently there's more flexible rules now about if you can live and work in the UK. People are choosing to study in the UK generally because they're interested in staying in the UK or Europe in this environment, or taking their skill set back home again. And you can now stay 2 years post your MBA degree on a transferable visa, which makes it easier for you to work in the UK potentially than in the US.
Thanks, Margaret. And I should just put a little plug here for Southeast Asia, where there's
Yeah,
10% of
yeah.
our class. Um, I just came back from Singapore and I met some of our alums there. They're doing really well. So Singapore is one location where many of our alums, not just the ones from the most recent class, but in previous classes as well, they've either moved there right after graduation or in the last 1-2 years have moved to working in Singapore because many of the other places other locations haven't quite managed COVID quite as well. So many people have been looking to move to Singapore. But Margaret, are there other sort of these global hubs where many of our students are going to, other than London and Singapore? Would some place like Dubai or Tokyo be up
Yeah.
there?
So Dubai is obviously an attractive area, particularly for those speaking English, those English language speakers. So we have a few students going there each year, but we don't have enough to be able to say specifically this percentage moved there. So the big bulk would be, as you can see here, those going to, back to China, Korea, Hong Kong, and to Southeast Asia. I would say there's centres in, there's Zurich for finance, there's Frankfurt as well, there's big finance centres as well, where people may go for those particular careers if they're interested in finance and the big IBD, etc.
Okay. And we actually have a question, another location sort of question. This is from Taylor, who's watching from Washington, D.C. Taylor wants to know, what about those other EU countries like Ireland?
So of course, Dublin is a huge centre for, lots of the big tech companies. They've got a great hub there in Dublin. So, for example, Amazon, Dublin, Luxembourg, and the UK, the Netherlands for companies like Booking.com. Where you might be a two-centre place. You might be spending some time here, some time in Munich, some time in Amsterdam. But yeah, Google, Dublin, and London-based, and it depends. You can often choose, or they'll look where the need and the best fit is. But there's often an opportunity to state your destination preference. So Ireland's a good destination, particularly for those big tech companies as well.
Cool. Before we go on to the next set of data, just wanted to do some shout outs to people. So Ashta from India, she's Cambridge is a dream. Jason's watching on YouTube from China. Hi Jason, must be quite late there. Same for Hai Bui from Vietnam and Musa from Indonesia. So we've got quite a large number of people from Asia there. Akasha's from India. Sammy, I don't know where you're from, but good day, I guess.
Australia?
I guess, yeah. We've got a question here from Yash. Yash is keen to learn about pre-MBA internship opportunities, where Yash wants to know where can he look to explore these pre-MBA internships.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, we don't get that involved in the pre-MBA internships because we're still looking after the current class and we're prepping your class for coming in. So that's quite an individual. Area for you to work. That said, a number of our students have done pre-MBA internships with local companies like Arm. There's a few did those a few years ago. A couple of years ago. If you want to work in tech, for example, it's really useful to approach tech companies that you're interested in, and either do something as an internship or as a project before you come, so that you can actually demonstrate your interest in transferring. I think it's particularly key if you want to move into a popular area and you haven't really got much in your CV right now. You want that evidence-based show, don't tell, that you've really got a genuine interest and you've got some evidence to prove that you have put yourself out there, you've found a great opportunity. And I think it would be reaching out to your network. I always, I have a thing about online websites and portals. I call that the online portal of doom, because when you press submit, you never know where it goes. You're along with thousands of other people. Quite often those websites are aggregators, so they're pulling on opportunities from all over the place, and they're all, lots of people are going for them. So I'd be looking at your personal network, I'd be looking at your school, I'd be talking to alumni that you're interested in, and I'd be trying to make trying to manufacture or scope a personal project that you could do in the time, and then, under promise and over deliver, have something quite contained, and then give them a bit of a wow when you could deliver your report at the end, so they think, wow, that's much more than I expected. So make sure you manage your time and your own expectations so that you can deliver something of value. But you can do a little brief kind of individual project before you come, as well as a formal internship, but they're usually personally organised. I don't know if you've got anything to add on that, Conrad.
No, other than I think many people use the time before the MBA maybe to pursue some kind of side project.
Hustle, yeah.
Or side hustle. And sometimes you do this almost a year before starting the MBA, and it's a good opportunity to get your feet, get your hands dirty, learn about that particular sector or that particular industry, and see whether that's a good fit for you, whether whether you like the kind of environment, whether you think the prospects, whether the prospects for that particular industry are what you think it is. And I think that would be a great platform in terms of building your network, understanding what drives you, what motivates you, and then when you come to the MBA, you'll be able to get a bit more of that focus, because it's always very tempting for some people when they come to the MBA and think, oh, there's so much opportunity, which there is, but you just don't know where you're going to put your resources into. And by resources, I mean your own energy, your time, your own social capital, right? The network that is there that you built to help you. They need to know that you've got at least some idea of what you want to do, and not just floundering around, right?
Yeah.
So Yash, I hope that helps.
Just
sorry,
quickly
Margaret,
again, I'm just going to add to that. You know, if you do want to do a pre-MBA internship or some project work in your own particular area of interest, building on what your current skill set is, then do go to the to the agencies and look for interim work, look for consultancy work. So they'll all have those short-term project works, but those are generally building on your current skill set rather than pivoting to something else. So if you want to get some experience, maybe in a different location, but building on your current skill set, that's also possible.
All right. I think this relates to a nice segue into this question from Tommaso, which is, what kind of preparation would you suggest in the next few months before starting an MBA? Margaret, any ideas or suggestions?
Yeah, I have views on this, you might imagine. So with our own MBA applicants, we have a pre-arrival portal, and we have a kind of funnel of activities to help get you ready to hit the ground running when you start in September. And that's looking at your skills, your interests and motivations, looking at your CV, building your network, thinking about your pitch, thinking about your story and how you're going to sell yourself. And we work on that so that when you get here, you've got your career plan, your career structure, so that you've got, something to start with. Even though it changes, you've got something written down and thoughtful to start with. I would always say there's that old expression, if you don't know yourself, you've got little chance of knowing anything else. Really understanding yourself, your skills, your gaps, etc. So I'll be asking my colleagues and friends for 360. I'll be asking them for my differentiating strengths. I'll be asking them where I might be able to better develop, so that I can actually use my MBA to fill those skills gaps. I'll be looking at what my target market wants, what I've currently got, and what I need to develop. And again, I'll be writing this down, because if you don't write it down, you'll forget it really quickly. So I'll be journaling it, because it also helps you track how you've progressed over the year. And we spoke this morning, and we've been talking to potential candidates this morning, really building your network. So you really want to tell people where you're going and what you're doing. You want people advocating for you, looking out for you. You want people invested in your journey. So letting people know that you're going on your MBA, what you're hoping to learn from them, how you're planning to keep in touch with them, and so that you keep your network warm, and then you keep in touch points with them over the year. So you've always got a springboard to build out your network when you get here. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Conrad. Oh, you've gone mute again there. Sorry.
No, I was just saying, Margaret, you've covered all the bases, so that's great.
I'm good at talking over the bases.
Going on, let's look at the sectors that our students moved into. So the big hiring sector here is industry. So 42% of the job seekers went into industry, 30% to finance, 25% to consulting. Margaret, this is a very big kind of categorization. So what actually is captured in industry?
Yeah, so I've got this written down so I don't forget. So obviously, the biggest chunk of that is tech, internet, e-commerce. So that's about half of that almost is in that internet e-commerce section. And we've got healthcare, pharma, biotech. We've got consumer products, FMCG. We've got arts, entertainment, media, esports, all that kind of thing as well. But the biggest chunk of that is tech, and that's been increasing over the years, and that continues to be so. And then in the finance part of it, we've got 30% going into finance, but of that, about a third will go into fintech, and then about 20% into VC private equity. So again, fintech we've put into finance, but equally, if we were looking at it differently, we might be able to put that into the tech sector as well. It depends how you look at it. So that's the finance sector. And then in consulting, about 70% of those that moved into consulting come from a non-consulting background. So it's gratifying to see that pivot of people building on their skill set to moving into the consulting industry. And then NGO, it could be, as you say, not-for-profit, public sector, etc. So we were down a bit in consulting last year, as I said, so it's nice to see that back again. I would say normally I'd expect the consulting to be up again this year. And again, depending where we move the fintech, the finance is becoming much more focused on that VCPE, and far less so on the very traditional IBD areas. We don't have, we probably get a handful of people going into that sector every year, depending on their own background. So if they come with that strong finance background, it's a build. It is quite hard to pivot from a non-finance background into IBD, for example. Easier if you've got a tech background to move into fintech, etc.
All right. And I think this is a good point to take Oliver's question.
Mm-hmm.
Oliver is from Estonia. He's calling in from Sweden.
Okay.
And he wants to know how many graduates were starting or co-founding the companies after graduation.
Yeah.
Do we have any idea about which sectors they're in?
So there's been all kinds, actually. So this year we've had 9 or 10 start a company straight out of the MBA. The different sectors, we've again very strong in fintech. So you might have seen Kestrel from a couple of years ago. They've just raised, I can't remember how much. I'll have to check it. Forgive me, I don't have those figures to hand. But they've raised a very successful round for fintech. Some people are in luxury goods, for example. They've pursued a particular area. So we've got Bodorf, who have luxury leather goods for a couple of years ago. A lot in the tech space, ed tech, biotech space as well. So biomarkers, etc. So it does range across the gamut depending on their own skills, interests, and motivations. A lot of these companies, I should say, they may be having an MBA as a co-founder or a founder, but there's lots of conversations that take place across the university, with the Enterprise Club, with QTech, in the colleges. So there's a few cross-fertilized ideas that have come from college conversations with people that have come from very, very different backgrounds and experience, who've been on MBAs for their business now, but they might be a rocket scientist, or they might be a chemist, or they might have Japanese studies or whatever. I don't have details of all the different sectors, I'm afraid, or the capital, but certainly that's something we can look into. I just don't have it to hand right now. But there's been a huge range over the years. We do have our own incubator here, and our own accelerator, and it's not a shoe-in to get in. You'd have to apply like anyone else, but generally we have 2 or 3 MBAs on the accelerator every year, which means they're supported in their endeavours as they go through it. And I'll have to dig out what they actually are working on there. So apologies for that. I don't have that level of detail right now.
I'd also add, Oliver, that in terms of the kinds of companies that people are setting up, at the very early stage, they're not really raising capital yet. They're just still trying to get an MVP going. They're still trying to build a team, right? Get that first couple of sales going before they think about raising capital. So but that is actually something that um, is covered in one of our electives in terms of how to raise capital, when should you raise capital, who should you raise capital from? Are you looking at getting investors who are able not just to give you the money and capital, but also the networks, be able to mentor you as you grow your startup, versus say someone who's just coming in to do some kind of financial engineering on a startup, or
Mhm.
just trying to maybe invest in 10, 20 startups and hope that one of you succeeds, right? So I think that's the kind of things that you will learn when you come on to the MBA. And
We do
I
have a
think
lot
this
of
is
support for
yeah,
entrepreneurs, and there's the Entrepreneurship Centre that is based here, as well as the Accelerator. We have Enterprise Tuesday. You are awash with opportunity to engage with other entrepreneurs across the university and across the city and the region. I think the challenge will be managing your time and your own priorities, having a bit of focus there. You could do something every minute of every day.
yeah. And I think this is the same kind of question from Shashank about the
Mhm.
percentage of candidates who've taken the entrepreneurship route. But I posed this question because Shashank's also asking about people who join early stage startups. So maybe the startups already have a handful of people,
Yeah.
maybe technical guys, and yeah, people coming in.
Yeah, there's a fair few of that. So we have over 100 companies recruit out of the MBA, and of those, there's some really new ones. There's ones that people hadn't heard of a few years ago and now well established. You've got the Ubers and the Shoppies and whatever, but there's also new fintechs. You've got small SMEs who are looking for our students as part of their founding body. So that roundabout now and from now on is when that kind of recruitment happens, because it's just in time recruitment towards the end of the course. They're not going to be like the big players recruiting, 9 months ahead. And we also we've got a networking session actually happening, I think, next week or the week after, with the founding network, and that is a network of 1,000 SMEs, and they who are just at the level of trying to build up and take the next step, and they're really interested in our talent because that's exactly the kind of people they need to help build their business. So they're coming here for a networking event. They do all kinds of webinars and pitching nights over the year. So those that are interested in this have got a really great access, not only to Cambridge, but to a wider network via the founding network as well. But I don't have a percentage who've joined the early stage startups, but I think it's growing, and I would say probably again 9 or 10% plus of those
Oh,
industry
if we
functions.
go on to the
Mm-hmm.
next area of the employment report, which is functions.
Yeah.
So this would be not the industry sector that a company is in, but the kind of roles that students have in the companies that they work for. So, Margaret, what is this chart telling us?
So I think it's showing the variety of functions you can take as a result of your MBA. So consultant, you can go and join a strategy consultancy firm, but you can act as a consultant internally within an organisation. You can build those consultancy skills working across a particular organisation or a particular sector, as well as you can in a strategic consultancy. Corporate planning and strategy, obviously, recruiters are looking to our MBAs for their strategic mindset, for their versatile skill set, for their ability to be those T-shaped people who can look across the whole business and have some in-depth knowledge as well. So those T-shaped people are really in demand, and that's particularly in strategy and in finance. Product management is hugely popular. It's been more popular in recent years, and it's growing. Every year we get a kind of sexy buzzword that everyone wants to work in. And when we do the pre-arrival survey, everyone wants to work in product management. But it aligns very well with the skill set here. We want people who are curious, empathic, who are resilient, are accountable, are feedback and evidence led. That's what you need in product management. That's what I say you need in career management as well. So I strongly advocate for people to project and product manage their career. If you're the product, how are you managing yourself? How are you doing your own R&D? How are you managing your own ops and your iterations and your quality control, etc., and marketing yourself? So it's a nice analogy for product management. And then operations, general management, marketing, sales are traditional kind of roles for MBAs. ESG, I'd expect that to rise in the future because sustainability and ESG is becoming significant. That said, it's probably a bit heretical to say this, but companies always say they're interested in ESG and sustainability, but you don't always see the number of roles in those areas matching what they say in their marketing spiel. So, but I do expect it to grow. You're muting again, Conrad.
Oh, sorry. Just wanted to show a bit about what Margaret was talking about in terms of the T-shaped individuals. So I just lifted this out from someone's post on Medium. So the I-shaped people are the ones who have deep functional expertise, right? So they may be in engineering, in accounting, in strategy, etc. And then you've got the generalists who know a little bit of kind of everything, little thing going on. But more importantly, I think has the ability to pick up and learn. And what we want in an MBA is to put those two together. So you don't give up your deep functional expertise, right? That's part of what makes you unique. But then you need to understand how different aspects of a business come together. And that's where the true sort of power and value comes from on the MBA. Right.
I think as well, GMAT recently did a post-COVID survey of so GMAT, General Management Council, did a post-COVID survey of employers about the top skills they were looking for from their MBAs. And it came back really interestingly. Strategic thinkers is a given, commercial skills, a versatile skill set, the ability to manage disruptive change, and you want evidence of that, and COVID has given plenty of it. Prepared to lead, but don't expect to have intensive company training. So what they want is self-starters. They want people who aren't going to be waited on, aren't going to wait to be served, who can spot an opportunity, hop on it and do something about it, that can manage a complex business environment and who are innovative. And I do genuinely feel that the Cambridge MBA really helps our students develop this really versatile skill sets that allows them to deliver with impact in the world when they in their post MBA. It's one of the most innovative, I think, and one of the most practical MBAs. And it is incredibly intense, and it's really hard to manage time for your career alongside all your studies. But I think it's the process of constantly reviewing, constantly applying your learning live in consulting projects that we have over the years. You're no sooner here than you're working on the Cambridge Venture project. You're no sooner finishing for Christmas and you're working on the global consulting project. You're working on your concentration and then on your individual project. So 4 times over the year, every term, you have a chance to review and apply. I think that's how you build your career muscle. It's not like studying for a year and then thinking at the end of it, oh, now where do I put this? You're applying it all the time. And I think that's what really helps you demonstrate this versatile skill set and the management of disruptive change that the companies are looking for now. And this self-efficacy, the personal drive, the personal ownership of your journey, not waiting to be served, but to own and drive your own take your own career path, your own product. You product manage your own career, you drive your own product pathway.
And I think that's a great time to segue into this question from Jasreen. Jasreen asks, is there a breakdown of functional roles within the sectors? And Jasreen's particularly interested in how many % of those who went to tech are in the product side. Do we have that?
I don't think I have that level of granularity in front of me, but I would say a significant number go into those product management roles. Some will go into finance, some will go into strategy. So this is across all the areas, but product management in tech would be one of the most significant ones, obviously. Yeah. We can look into that afterwards.
Sure. And if we can look at some of the top employers from last year. So there's Amazon that drives a lot of that, the tech side of things, but Deloitte from consulting, and of course quite a number of the main strategy houses.
Yeah.
So Margaret, any comments on this?
Yeah, so We generally, we have over 100 recruiters, coming to recruit from our MBA, and mainly they'll be recruiting in, it's the right role for you. So it's ones and twos. So Amazon, we've had higher than that, we've had less than that, but generally Amazon are generally take a decent amount. You have to remember we've got a relatively small MBA compared with some of the big cohorts. Shopee again, we had JP Morgan, Citigroup, J.O. Hambro, OC&C, EY Parthenon also take multiples last year. In fact, for MBB recruitment, we got, in fact, there were five offers from McKinsey, 5 for BCG, but not all of them were taken up and some went elsewhere. And I think this is another thing. You see the board statistics that come on an employment report, but what they don't always tell you is the choices that people have made and their motivation for making them. So, for example, I was talking to someone just the other day who'd got an offer, and he'd come from a very, PE background, doing very well. And he said, I don't want to do that anymore. I absolutely hated it. I'm willing to take a dip to go somewhere else. I'm really excited about this new thing, and I can see I've got my build trajectory here. So it's not always about building on salary and working with big firms. He had the big firm, he had the big salary. He was now looking to do something different. So everyone's journey is personal and different. So although we had more offers from McKinsey and BCG, not everyone chose to take them up. So, yeah.
All right. And I think now we got a couple more minutes. Let's just spend them on questions. So we've got this from Jiwa, long question here, but basically he's wondering whether posting the average base salary influences or has a negative effect on graduates' ability to bargain with recruiters.
Thank you. This is a really interesting one. So we do a lot of work with students on negotiating salary, and we would always say use a band. We have a platform here that allows you to look at the global salary for a particular company or completely sector from all the UK schools, for example, that have used this platform. So you can generally get a range you can do an average over the last few years. You can do an average of last year of what the salary is, the high, the low, and the median, and the mean. And we'd always say then use a range, and always the bottom of the range should be slightly above the minimum you'd be prepared to accept, because they'll always go towards the bottom. So you need to make sure that you're pegging yourself above what you'd be prepared to accept, and then have a really good reason for looking for a 5 or 10% increase. We have seen increases in salary in some sectors where they're really trying to get people in. So MBB have gone up this year, and there is now competition for talent. But again, if you're looking to pivot and you're changing sector and function and location, you haven't got any evidence yet to suggest that you're going to be, command this salary. You have to have other things in your back pocket to use to negotiate. So I'd always suggest an accelerated review. If you usually review after a year, ask for it after 6 months, because there you're saying, I know that I'm going to deliver. I'm confident I can give you what you're looking for, and you're putting your money where your mouth is. But we would never say a particular fixed point. We'd always say a range, and would again suggest the range depending individually on the different company. And we talk to our competitor schools all the time, so we know where we're at with that as well. So I don't think it pegs it. I think we're quite realistic. And for the big employers, for example, the Amazons and the MBB, they have their bands. We know what they are. Every school knows what they are. And it's quite hard to negotiate more than 5% on that, because they start everyone from every school on the same thing. There'd be a bit of a to-do if they had different schools with different salaries, but then you can negotiate on bonus, on sign-on, on review times, etc. as well. So yeah, we never say a point, and we'd strongly encourage no one ever to say a point, because they'll leap on that and say, thanks very much, that'll do nicely. So you need to think of a band, making sure that the bottom is higher then the minimum you'd be prepared to accept, because you want to make sure that you're always going to get more. And if they come down, it's bearable, then it's up to you to decide whether or not it's something you're worth compromising for. It's worth compromising for.
Okay. The next question from Isha is about HR analytics and impact consulting. Do you know how often or how many students move to these areas?
Honestly, not that many go into HR analytics. We probably have, a couple a year. Impact consulting people are really interested in, and they always say they're interested in it before they come, but relatively few go into those sectors afterwards, potentially because of the salary implications as well. So I'd say less than a handful.
Barath from Dusseldorf asked, how many candidates went to VCs?
So I've got the percentages. So as I say, we've sliced it. 28% of those went into VCPE. I don't have the actual numbers here. Many of them London-based, majority London-based.
Yeah. We've got someone from LinkedIn asking what companies recruit for product management. And before Margaret jumps in, when I was in Singapore, I was meeting alums who are working with companies like Shopee. I don't know if people are familiar, but Shopee is a very large e-commerce company in Southeast Asia, and they're doing product management. There are people who are working in TikTok doing different aspects of product management. And I should say that a lot of times when people think product management, they're thinking of an actual product that's being sold commercial, to a consumer or to a business. But actually, in many of these companies, for them, product management could be something like content curation would be a product, because that's something that they could then sell to advertisers, but it's not something that's very obvious to us. Margaret, any thoughts on this?
I would say the same. I mean, there's people who sell a service, there's people who sell a product, there's people who sell streaming. All of them are products that they're putting out to the customer marketplace. So product management is actually pretty ubiquitous in all kinds of areas. But obviously, in tech, it's particularly most of the SMEs and small tech companies that recruit will be looking for those kind of areas.
Okay, and I think this would be our last question. It's from Arvin, who asked, from the top employers, how many were sponsored and returned to their employer?
Yeah, we don't count. So in our employment report, we only count job seekers, those that are who have started a new employment after the MBA. So we don't count people who are sponsored, and we don't count people who are returning to the same job, to the same employer. So all the figures are based on job seekers who are doing a shift, so that none of those are going back to sponsored candidates. They're not included in our statistics.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, everybody, and thanks very much, Margaret, for joining us. For those of you who are interested to read more about the employment report, you can go to our website, or there's the QR code that's up there on the upper right-hand corner. You can scan that and it'll bring you to the employment report itself. The next Careers Takeoff live stream will be this time next week, so the 29th of April, 12:45 to 1:30, and it'll be a blockbuster. It's actually a breakthrough to blockbuster. We will have a member of faculty, Aris, who's written a book about biotech, and he'll be joined by an alum, Carl Bergman, who really had a very nice sort of career journey, because he was a biotech engineer, straight out of university, went into consulting, came to the MBA. I think he went to Arthur D. Little, right? And then he did finance before he found a scientist, who was developing a certain diagnostic testing. They started a company that's now, I think that's now raising capital in Sweden. So please do join us if you're available this time next week, 12:45 to 1:30, to learn more about the biotech ecosystem, the biotech industry, and entrepreneurship within the biotech area. So that just leaves me to say thank you very much, Margaret. It's been great having you. And
it's been nice to talk to you.
Yeah, and I hope that all of you who joined us today, you felt inspired, or you got more knowledge about your own career journey. And I hope that you'll be able to cross paths and see how your careers develop.